everyone and their mom who's marketing franchises or trying to generate leads of franchise buyers, they're all paying for that search term. So you're not getting the most accurate information. What you're getting is the businesses and the companies and the franchises that can pay the most amount of money to rank the highest on YouTube. This is one of the questions that I hate the most when people ask, what are the best franchises? Because it's like, well, what's the best for you? Enjoying a product or a service is completely different than running the business operation. And unfortunately, there's a lot of stuff in the franchise sales industry of just trying to get people to the finish line as quickly as possible without doing all of the homework and due diligence. And I just personally, I don't believe in that. I unfortunately see this often. It drives me crazy. And yeah, I struggle to maintain my professionalism in that moment because it's like, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Welcome to the Franchise Empire Show. They say Rome wasn't built in a day, and building your empire doesn't happen overnight. My name is Tarek Johnson, and owning franchises is what helped me go from employee to employer and start building my empire for my family. So this podcast is for you, the empire builders. For those of you who want to build something that stands the test of time. This is for those of you who are crazy enough to believe that you can make the dream in your head come to life. This podcast is all about bringing you real people who are building real empires so you can get inside their mind and heart and get proven strategies and actionable insights that will catapult you to build, grow, and scale your empire. Today, we're going to be talking about 14 huge mistakes to avoid when buying a franchise. So this is a really important topic, as you can imagine. I literally just had a conversation today with a franchisee who said, I found out today, this person's already bought the franchise brand. I found out today that the franchisees on average were only making about 12% profit margin. And that's the good franchisees. There's a lot of franchisees that are actually unhappy in the system. So the point of today is to help you learn the 14 mistakes to avoid when buying a franchise so that you can not just avoid buying, the wrong franchise, but you can make sure you buy the right one that is in alignment with your goals and that can give you the proper return on investment and add to your quality of life, not take away from it. Now, I do 100% believe that franchising, and I have a whole slide deck that I'm going to walk you through. It's actually pretty extensive. So we're going to talk about some good stuff. Let's see. Let me go ahead and share that real quick. So this is what we're going to cover today. And in case you didn't know, there are over 4,000 different franchise brands. And food, like most people think of food when they think of franchises, there's franchises in every industry you can imagine. So I'd say probably out of the 4,000 different franchise brands that are out there, there's probably only about 20% of them are actually solid, strong, proven, solid track record of franchisees that are happy and profitable. So let's talk about how to catch that and how to make sure to avoid that. So we'll go ahead and dive in. So like I said, although, franchising is one of the most proven business models in the world, every year franchisees fail. And every year people buy franchises that they regret. And so the reality is, there are 4,000 franchise options, but most of them won't meet the criteria that you're looking for. And many of them don't have a track record of happy and profitable franchise owners. And sometimes it's actually the ones that have the biggest names that are actually the worst to buy. Sometimes it depends. We'll walk through that here. So, and I pulled this out of one of our programs that we have for clients. So it's talking about the entire section of finding the right franchise. But, our focus is helping people reduce their risk to ensure that you make a decision that sets you up for success when buying a franchise. All right. This is actually, by the way, out of our Franchise Buyers Academy. We have this is like one little segment in it. So you can check that out if if you want kind of the shortcut to all of this. Let me just drop the link there for you while we're going through with this, and then we will get on with the show. What's up, Jerry from Tampa? I'm in Orlando, so not too far from you. Ahmad in Fresno, cool, California, 3 hours 3 hours ahead. All right, so let's dive in. And again, if you guys have any questions, go ahead and drop them as a comment, and we'll go over it. Antoinette, Woodbridge, New Jersey. That's funny. I grew up in Woodbridge, Virginia. Sweet. Let's rock and roll. So, one of the first mistakes to avoid, and they will get deeper and deeper. Some of these may seem like top level things, but some of these are going to be like pretty technical. All right. So, scouring the internet, Googling what are the best franchises, or what are the best, franchises in this industry, or what franchises make the most money. The reason why this is a huge mistake is because the information that you get is never going to be really detailed or accurate, right? And there is no quote unquote best franchise. So the way to think about it, and really when everyone and their mom who's marketing franchises or trying to generate leads of franchise buyers, they're all paying for that search term. So you're not getting the most accurate information. What you're getting is the businesses and the companies and the franchises that can pay the most amount of money to rank the highest on YouTube. Typically, you're going to get the best marketers. And so the way to think about the best franchises, something what I call my profitable franchise formula, there's 4 components to it. And so like that, this is one of the questions that I hate the most when people ask, what are the best franchises? Because it's like, well, what's the best for you? Because a franchise that, as an example, we recently had a client that bought a B2B franchise, business to business, right? But this individual has like really great relationships in the community. They love talking to people. They love meeting new people, and they're totally fine with sales and going out there. And I don't want to say knocking on doors, but drumming up business, right? But for you, you may be someone that just the idea of that sounds terrifying, right? So although that franchise can show great financials and show that they're making a bunch of money, right, in their FDD, but if everything that it takes for you to be successful as an owner are things that you hate doing, then it's not a best franchise anymore. So it's got to match your skill sets, right? If you're introverted, operationally minded, you want to make sure that you're buying something that matches that. Number 2 is that not all franchises perform well in different markets. I experienced this firsthand. My California store crushed it. My Florida store did not crush it. There's a variety of reasons. I talk about it in other content that I do. And I've talked about why from a deeper standpoint, but turns out the market demand was very different in where my second store was, right? And then the third thing is profit potential. You have to verify that there's profit potential on the business, and it's got to be a business you believe in. When you just wind up buying a random business that you just think you can make a bunch of money in, that's a recipe for disaster. So that is number 1. And actually, while we're doing this, I'm just gonna, let's see, do I have a ticker? Okay. So as we're going through this, by the way, we have something called the Franchise Buyers Academy. It takes you through not just mistakes. This is a small portion from the Franchise Buyers Academy, but everything you need to know about, if you should buy a franchise, how to make money owning franchises. And you can go check it out at franchiseempire.com/FBA. It's incredibly detailed. Let's go into the next one. And then let me just look into the comments real quick. We got Leo from Toronto. Cool. We got James from Woodbridge, Virginia. Cool. That's where I grew up. Awesome. All right. So looking at the top franchise 500 list, right, as a way to find good franchises. Guys, so the way that these lists are, so again, remember in the beginning, we talked about there are 4,000 franchise brands, right? The top franchise 500 list are basically what are the biggest franchises? What are the biggest franchises that have the highest total amount of sales and the highest number of franchisees? Now, you would think, right, in theory, you would think, okay, the franchises on these lists are the best opportunities out there for me to go out there and buy so that I can achieve my goals. So usually when we talk to people, there's two different scenarios. Number one is actually there's a couple different scenarios. Number one, I totally want to get out of the work that I'm doing now. I work as an employee. I want to be full time as a business owner. I'm ready to just make the leap right away. So I need a business that I know can replace my income. It's got to have a track record of that. I'm going all in right away. Second scenario is individuals that go, hey, I want to supplement my income. Either I want to transition first and build up the business for a couple of years, keep my job, and then make the leap, or they're just looking for additional income. And then the third situation overall are entrepreneurs that either want to expand their portfolio, they built a business on their own, and they don't want to have to do it again, or they want something that complements their current business. And so what happens is a lot of these franchise 500 lists, they're essentially paid marketing list, right? And so just because Taco Bell and McDonald's shows up on there, well, there's most of the franchises on there, there's probably not any availability. A lot of them cost millions of dollars to get open, and it's just the wrong way to find a good franchise that's good for you. So I want you to eliminate the thought of what are the best franchises and replace it with what are the best franchises for me. Okay? So our team have looked into a few hundred franchises and put together a list of 5 low-cost franchises that all make $1 million or more and that have a proven track record of both happy and profitable franchisees. So if you have a net worth of at least $150,000 and you want to see if the territory that you want is still available for any of these franchises, then you can go to franchiseempire.com/check territory. All right, let's get back to the episode. So what you want to do instead is you want to use a proven process, just like buying a home. So as an example, when you go to buy a house, you typically, right, you want to get broad information around categories like, hey, okay, maybe you want to know the general best areas to live in, right? But then you have to actually go see and check them out and create a criteria, and you follow a proven process. So you don't just randomly drive around looking at homes, or I don't know, do you? Do you guys just randomly drive around in neighborhoods? You're like, I want to buy a house. Let's go see what's available. And you just drive around for hours and hours and hours looking for sale signs. No, the proven process in buying a home is you reach out to a real estate agent, right? Or a realtor, and you create your criteria. Hey, I want a house that has 4 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, and it's got to have an office too because I work from home. It's got to have a backyard fenced in because I have a dog. A pool would be nice, but it's not required. So you create a criteria, right? And then you follow a proven process. So that's what you want to do when buying a franchise. So like our Franchise Buyers Academy has a process and a criteria that you create through there, so that if you wanted to go do it on your own, as an example, you could. The other thing you can do is you can work with like a franchise broker or franchise consultant, right? They generally act as like a real estate agent, and they'll go out there, help you create a criteria and kind of find franchises for you. The tough part, well, mistake that we'll cover further along into this is that unfortunately there are a lot of like franchise brokers and consultants out there that'll just show the same 3 to 5 franchises to people, and you're not getting a good representation of what's actually available. And nowadays there's folks pushing a lot of emerging brands right now, which emerging brands make me a little bit nervous. Like maybe they're doing something different in the marketplace, but they don't have the proven track record yet. I tend to like blue chip franchises. That's what I gravitate towards overall. The challenge is sometimes there's not territories available. So one of the things that you can do, by the way, is if let me take this banner away. If you wanted to see, by the way, what franchises are available in your market specifically, and set up a free call with a 15-minute call with our team, you can go to franchiseempire.com/check territory. And that way you don't have to like scour the internet, and like our team knows what franchises, like what their numbers are, because we can see all those things and we research them, etc. So I'll switch that back over to that. All right. I see some questions. I got one question popping in. Again, as we're going through this, if you have questions, please drop it in the comments. I'll see how many I can get to before we wrap it up. So, what's the third mistake? And again, we're going to get more deeper, more technical as we go along with this. The third mistake is uh, completely overwhelmed and confused by the sheer volume of information and do nothing. This is something I see all the time. We actually have people that reach out to us that they go, I've been looking to buy franchise for years now. And I'm like, why? Why? I don't know. It's just like hard to find. I couldn't really figure out what were the good ones, what were the ones that made money, like which one I really wanted to buy. It was just there were so many options out there. I got overwhelmed and just kind of confused. So I just gave up. And I'm like, oh, that's really interesting. So that's definitely not the way of going about it. Our average client, they when they start working with us, they get introduced to the franchisor within 2 weeks. Um that they wind up buying, and they sign their franchise agreement in less than 4 months. The longest part is due diligence. Like literally they're starting a conversation usually around 2 weeks after working with us, and then it's you go slowly and methodically through due diligence. We'll talk about that more later. A lot of people do it opposite. They find a franchise, they get really excited, and then they buy it, and people will regret it because they moved too quickly and they didn't know how to do due diligence. So really, the process that you want to use instead of getting confused and overwhelmed is we narrow it down to three main parts. You want to focus on finding the right franchise, right? So having a specific criteria, and knowing exactly what it is that you want, what it is that you're looking for. Make sure that it matches that criteria, just like you would with buying a house. You know, again, I want this many bedrooms, I want this many bathrooms. Generally, I want this amount of square feet, right? So there are things that are non-negotiable for you in your criteria, and there are some things that are negotiable for you in there. It also requires a little bit of introspection on your part and some analysis so that you can figure out, okay, what problems do I want to solve in my marketplace? What aligns with my skill sets, my goals, etc. Then once you've narrowed down to 3 franchises, so our advice is never vet more than 3 franchises at one time. And you want to go deep rather than wide, meaning in due diligence, you don't want to just casually do your due diligence. You want to dive full in. And we'll talk about a little bit about how to do that in a minute as one of the mistakes. Because really, you want to get as fast as possible to what's called franchisee validation. That's when you get to the point of the process of looking at a franchise that you get to talk to the other franchise owners and you can find out what is it really like owning this business. Are you actually making the amount of money that the franchisor says I can make or the FDD says I can make, etc. Right? Um, and then after you sign your agreement, you want to get launched properly. So there are 3 distinct phases, and people mess up at either phase. I've seen people that chose a great franchise, but then they sucked at the launch part because of a variety of issues. But well, that's another thing. That's another topic for another conversation. So like in our zero to profitable franchise system, which is like our flagship process that we use with our clients, we have a very specific due diligence and vetting process that we walk them through and that we help them through. So there's none of this like getting confused and overwhelmed because you have a methodical process. If that makes sense. This is another mistake I see is that people will wind up working with franchise consultants and brokers who just push the same 3 to 5 franchise brands. This drives me crazy a little bit. And I saw this. So my background is financial planning. For anyone that may not know that, I had my investment licenses for 15 years. I got my investment licenses starting when I was 19 years old. Series 6, Series 7, Series 63, Series 66. And so I was a financial advisor for many years, and I would see it with financial advisors. You'd have advisors that they had like the same 3 investments that they pretty much recommend to everyone. And, you know, there's hundreds, if not thousands of different investment options out there. And I thought it was a real disservice to clients narrowing it down to this cookie cutter approach. And so what happens is there's franchise consultants and brokers who, number one, never have owned a business in their life. So I just think that's a little bit ironic, personally. But then they'll just push the same 3 to 5 brands because they know that those 3 to 5 brands, they maybe think that they're good brands, or it's what's hot, right? And what's selling, and or what which franchisor has the best sales process. Because anyways, so you really got to make sure to do your homework there. So the solution to that is, number one, choosing one franchise broker. Like shopping around, working with multiple at one time is it's like inappropriate. I see people do it all the time. You choose one. So you interview some if that's what makes you feel the most comfortable, and you stick with them. Like imagine you're working with multiple realtors at the same time, like having multiple people show you houses. That's not how it works. There's a professional etiquette for some people. For whatever reason, when people look at franchise brands, they're like, I'm working with multiple different brokers. I'm like, what? I don't know. Maybe that's how you roll. Maybe that is how you roll, right? It's like the difference between being monogamous. I'm saying the wrong word. It's towards the end of the day. I've been talking all day. And we'll get to those questions in a little bit. Yeah, we have a hybrid approach, trendy for Threads. We do franchise brokerage, which I don't like the word franchise consulting. I think it's not an accurate representation, because typically consultants are paid for the service that they provide, regardless of like the outcome, right? So, but in the franchise consulting and brokerage world, just like real estate agents, you're paid at the end of the transaction from the seller. So they get paid from the franchisor. So I don't think the word consultant, I think it's misleading. So I think the term franchise broker is more transparent. Like you're brokering the transaction and you're going to get compensated for doing that. Just a personal thing. So make sure that they don't push the same 3 to 5 brands. And another thing too is that about what I've seen from my experience, this is not any sort of real data. This is an anecdotal estimated amount, but what I've seen is about 95% of franchise brokers and consultants I know, they don't talk about resales at all. They don't deal with them. They don't show them to clients. They don't understand them. They don't understand how it works. And it's actually harder to navigate as a professional guiding someone through the process of buying a resale, because it's more complex. There's a lot more due diligence and there's a lot more moving parts that have to happen. That's one of the things that we do for every client that comes through the door. We always look, as a standard part of our process, what resales are available in your area. Oh, funny story, guys. All right. So there was someone that had an appointment scheduled with our team, and they canceled the appointment. And, sometimes with calendars, there's the ability to put in a comment. So we asked, like, what's the cancellation reason? And this individual said that they looked at the reviews on our website and that they thought that the reviews were too good to be true. Because we had put on one of them that the person was profiting from day one. And I guess we do live in a world where there's a lot of skepticism now, because there's a lot of crazy claims that are made. But I actually responded to that person. I mean, we have so many people that we communicate with. I typically don't, but I was like, well, that person bought a resale, a franchise business that was already profitable. So that's why they were profitable from day one. It's not anything too good to be true. I don't know. Anyways, I thought that was interesting. So I don't know if they've responded. That was yesterday, but there we go. Okay. Let's see. And maybe I'll pause in the middle and do some questions. Let's go through a couple more. All right. So having preconceived notions about what type of franchises they want and being closed off to other options. Have you guys ever experienced this before? Like, I'm curious, how did you wind up learning or getting interested in franchising, what I've learned over the last um, almost 4 years of now running this business and helping individuals find, vet, and launch franchises is that a lot of people wind up seeing a franchise that they like. Either they have an experience as a customer or a client, and they go, "Oh, that'd be cool to own one of those." And that's how a lot of people get into like the conversation or interest of buying a franchise. And so, like, we'll have people that'll come in, they're like, "Yeah, I only wanna buy, I'm interested in food franchises." And it's like, "Oh, okay, interesting, like, tell me more. Why?" And what a lot of people don't know, as an example, this is a mistake that I made, when I bought my franchises, I was locked in on food and juices and smoothies. I had I this is part of why I teach all of this now. And so for anyone, I had an appointment with a guy. He actually became a client, but and I think he said this term in the nicest way, but he was like, "You're a guru now." And I'm like, One, no, not at all. And I don't claim to have done everything right. So if you're looking for the person that goes, I've done everything perfect in business and franchising and I'm the most successful person, that's not me. I'll just be like 100% transparent. I'm very clear about that. I've made a lot of mistakes. And so my intention in putting out this content is to help you avoid making mistakes and some of the ones that I made. So as an example, what a lot of people don't know is that food franchises have some of the lowest profit margins in all of the different industries. Actually, food in general as a business segment outside of franchising is known to have very, very thin profit margins. And so sometimes they have really high, a lot of times really high startup costs too. So typically, unless you're going to be an owner operator, you just so happen to find a food franchise system that has higher profit margins because of a variety of things, you really need to have at least 3 to 5 locations, typically, in food in order to make any sort of meaningful, money. And a lot of retail models are like that too. So one of the things we have in the Franchise Buyers Academy as an example, which is like a little intro course, a $27 course that we have teaching people the ins and outs of franchises. It's like over 4 hours of content. Took me months to create. I think it's crazy that we offer it for 27 bucks. But one of the things we cover there is the sales to investment ratio. So we talk about with retail brands and service brands, what are the ratios that you need to look at in terms of what the cost is to the average sales in the FDD and the item 19 if the franchisor shows that. Okay, that was the perfect segue. You would think I know exactly what's next. I don't, because it's been some time since I created this. All right. So, what you do want to know is you want to understand the difference between buying a service-based franchise and a retail-based franchise. Uh, it's interesting because I don't know all of the people that are watching live right now or the people that'll watch the replay. What I don't know about you is what your exposure to knowledge about franchising is. Or did you just start thinking about it or looking? Have you vetted a bunch of different brands? Maybe you're a franchisee already. But what I found is that most people don't realize that there's service-based franchises and retail-based franchises. So as an example, there are franchises in many different industries where you're signing a commercial lease in, ideally like a shopping center, and that's a retail-based model. And so there are a lot of pros and cons to that. We talk about that in the Franchise Buyers Academy. Just to throw a couple off the top of my head. Well, number one, it's going to take you 9 months to a year to get open after you sign your franchise agreement. So if your priority is, hey, I want to get into business ASAP, like I'm really itching to start my own thing. A year from now, I'd like to be in X situation where I've already generated this amount of profit. Well, that's not going to happen in a retail model because it's going to take you about a year to get open. The process of, I'm not going to go through it here because I don't want to make this longer than it needs to be. But there are great service brands that are you don't need a retail location for, and you're going out there providing a service. And you can have an office location. Some of them you can work from home, but then the startup costs tend to be lower as well. Um, and you're not signing a 10-year commercial lease that you're personally guaranteeing. So there are all these pros and cons. I break it down in detail in the Franchise Buyers Academy. But what I find is that most people have no idea. And they're just like, oh yeah, I want to have a wellness franchise. I want to have a gym or a fitness franchise. And it's like, well, that costs $450,000 to get open, and the average sales is $600,000. The math isn't mathing. And then you'd have to sign a 10-year lease. So it doesn't make sense. What are some of the few franchises that are in most demand, would you say, are in Florida? Do you think home care services or cleaning has good overall general numbers based on statistics? I mean, Florida's so broad. I mean, it just depends market by market. As an example, we're here in Orlando, pretty close to Disney, and I was just talking to my wife about this. There's like 3 or 4 IV drip franchises within like a quarter of a mile in this specific area. So if someone was really fixed on, hey, I really want to open up an IV drip franchise, where they shoot like the vitamins in and stuff like that, one of those wellness ones, it wouldn't be in this area. So sometimes you have to give up one of the things that you want. You're like, I really want to open one up, but I want to open it up here. Well, I wouldn't recommend that with all of the competition that's there. So you just have to find a different area and territory. Um, Home care services, obviously, Florida has like a high senior population. Cleaning, I mean, I think there's some opportunity for home services. Again, it's very like market specific. So, but home services is overall very attractive right now, I would say. Senior care is it's a tough business, but I know some franchisees that do well in the senior care space. But again, this is where your skill sets and just how you're wired as an individual has to match up with the business. Like a guy that I know, a franchisee that I've had on our podcast, the Franchise Empire Show, he's built a very successful senior care franchise. Um, but he loves people. He loves building relationships. He loves the marketing aspect of going into different um, having to go build relationships in the community and network. Like he loves those things. For me, I don't love those things. I can't stand it. So like that wouldn't be a great opportunity for me, even if the market demand and the opportunity is there. So it looks like, hey, you do asphalt and seal coating, right? So I would imagine that if that's your core business, I'd want to find a business that complements that business that you have there. If you're looking for a franchise, that's typically my advice for entrepreneurs. I could keep like going down the rabbit hole with that, but let's go to the next question. Ahmed said, "What are blue chip?" I said blue chip. So CHIP. So if you've ever heard the term blue chip stocks, that comes from my financial advising days. Those are stocks that are typically on the S&P 500. So like you'd think of like a General Electric or Apple or like some of these bigger names. And so that's why you'll see like in our franchise Buyers Academy on our page for it, right? So like on the headline on to the website for our Franchise Buyers Academy, it's making money using blue chip franchises. And when I talk about blue chip franchises, I'm talking about like highly proven franchise concepts. So highly proven franchise concepts that have a tangible track record that that franchisees have been successful with. Typically, they're going to have at least 50 or more franchisees that are already operating. So the model's proven, right? The model's proven, and you're able to talk to a certain amount of those franchisees that are able to validate that the amount of money that they're making and that they're happy and that they're profitable. To me, those are blue chip franchises. They've been around, they've stood the test of time. They haven't been around for a year or two. You're talking, a solid 5-10 years or more and a solid track record. Hopefully that answers your question. All right, I'm going to answer a couple more questions, and then we're going to keep hitting the rest of the mistakes. So, do I think here's a question here. Do you think Crumble is a fad franchise or something here for the long haul? Ooh, Jerry, that's a good question. So, for whatever reason people love or hate Crumble Cookie, um, I have a video on TikTok that got like almost 400,000 views about Crumble Cookie, which is wild. I've heard anecdotally from individuals that system-wide sales are dropping. I don't know that to be accurate or true. I have not looked at their most recent financial disclosure document. So actually, I want to do that. I haven't looked it up in a bit. I know for a while that the average sales in one of their previous disclosure documents was like 1.8 million. I'm curious what it is now. But yeah, I don't know, to be honest. I know there's one that just opened across the street here, and it doesn't seem busy. But there's another one by our house that is busier. So I don't know. It's a good question. But either way, they're sold out across the country. What you'll see is there's a lot of resales now for Crumble. There's some owners that sold at the high when they were at their peak. I think coming out of COVID, I saw that there were 2 locations that were packaged together that sold for 5.5 million. 2 locations. Now, granted, there were some locations that were doing a lot of money in sales, but my goodness, that would be heartbreaking if that person bought 2 at 5.5 million existing locations that were crushing it and then sales tanked, right? So, yeah, buying a resale is a whole nother thing. Trendy for Threads already answered your question. Is Franchise Empire a consulting firm? So yes, we do have a standard brokerage service, franchise brokerage service that we offer. We also have a more robust service where we provide more support, and that's a paid service where you have we just hold your hand more. You get all these modules, you get due diligence tools, all these different things. So we just want to help as many people as possible. Part of why I created the Franchise Buyers Academy, because it's $27 and it's like 4 hours of some of my best stuff in sequence, where you just get to like pretty much get your questions answered of like, should I buy a franchise? What are the best things to look at and kind of ways to approach it, mistakes to avoid, everything like a one-stop shop, essentially. Okay, I see some more questions. I'm going to continue on with this for a second. I'm going to jump back to some of the other questions that have popped up. So, not getting any help in the process and trying to do it all by yourself. So, in my experience, we used to have like this pretty robust due diligence service that it was like a paid consulting service for people that already found a franchise and was already in conversation with them, and um and then we'd help them do due diligence, like handhold them through it. What I found is that every time people go out there looking on their own for franchises, about 90% of the time they were looking at something that was stupid. That was like it blew my mind. Like, why in the world, out of the 4,000 options out there, why would you want to put your life savings into this? I'm talking about people finding food franchises that have one franchise. And they're like, I love it. It's so awesome. The owner's so great. I want to be a franchisee. I'm like, that is a really dumb idea. Personally, that's my opinion. So it's important to get guidance through the process overall. Um, there's just a lot of different nuances. So my recommendation is to get guidance from experts with franchising experience. It's the franchise brokerage and consulting world is not regulated. Like, you don't have to have any sort of, I was just talking to someone today about this. You don't have to have any sort of licenses in order to do it. So, which is one thing. Like, when I was a financial advisor, I had to go through crazy hard licenses, studying for the series exams, Series 6, 63, 7, all that stuff. So there's a certain professional standard there, but there's not in the franchise brokerage and consulting world. So it's a little bit of the Wild West out there. It's a little bit unfortunate. We see it all the time. People come to us having worked with brokers and consultants that were just literally just had a quick conversation with them and just emailed them like a few different names of brands and introduced them. And like they don't talk to them ever again, or they don't really provide any guidance or support. And it's pretty sad actually. I know I'm chuckling, but I'm laughing because it seems so moronic to me. It actually pisses me off. Because this is a big deal. This is a really big deal. So you got to do your homework, and you don't want to be rushed through the process as well. Doing due diligence is the longest part of working with our clients, and it usually takes a few months because we want to make sure that people do it right and correctly. So let's move on to the next one, and then we'll keep hitting some questions. Another key one, guys, is this is a basic one, but it's choosing a business because you love the products as a customer. Anyone been guilty of this yet in terms of franchises you were looking at? Look, at the end of the day, enjoying a product or a service is completely different than running the business operation. So this was part of our reasoning and getting into the juice and smoothie space. Although I had some other better legitimate reasons as well, like the market demand was there. There was a tremendous amount of pent up market demand. But part of it was like, oh, we make juices and smoothies at home all the time. Guys, like building out a $340,000 store and overseeing that and having a staff of 15 people and being open 14 hours a day and having food and a walk-in freezer and a fridge and having a team of teenagers or kids that are in college, and it's totally different. Just because you like sipping and consuming the beverage, running that operation is it's just night and day. So don't choose a business just because you love the product as a customer. It certainly could be one of the components, right? You could say, "Oh, I had this great service and I think the service makes a lot of sense in my market," right? Um, but generally it's about so here's another story. So I talked to a guy recently. This guy's super successful. He owns actually I have my card right here. I just saw him today. He owns a brokerage company helping people buy apartment buildings. And so if you're watching Joe, it'll be funny. And so he's very successful, and he at one point looked at an Orange Theory franchise. Now, Orange Theory is probably the most prolific fitness franchise out there, and there's franchisees that have done very well with that brand. Um, but it's not complementary to his business at all. And so the reason why he was looking at it, because he was like, oh, I love going to Orange Theory. Their workouts are great. Their system's great. Blah, da, 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 da. Well, it turns out he probably would get his best bang for his buck and investing in a franchise that's complementary to his existing business, right? So what you want to do is you want to use a proven process like the profitable franchise formula, which I talked about before. So as opposed to just being like, oh, I love that product or service, let me buy it. You have a specific criteria, right? So that criteria is skill sets, belief, demand, profit potential. All right, we're gonna dive into some of the other juicy ones. So we'll hop in quickly. So the next one is choosing a franchise because you see them opening up everywhere and they look busy. This is a pretty simple one to debunk. Uh, there are some franchises that grow really fast. For whatever reason, they catch fire. What happens is they sell faster than franchisees can get open. And so what happens is there's not as much of a track record as you think. And, this actually happened with, I heard that this happened with some Crumble locations, which was, when they'd first open up, there'd be all this people would flock to it. And the first, couple months, they'd be slammed. And then sales would slowly taper off as the excitement kind of dwindled down. And I guess maybe as people felt guilty, realizing that the serving size they post on their wall for 150 calories is actually for a quarter of a cookie. Who eats a quarter of a cookie? So realizing that the cookies are, 600 to 800 calories, they're like, I don't know, maybe I'm not going back. Or maybe they go, okay, I spent the $5 for a cookie. It's not worth the hype or the buzz. But guys, there's economics to these businesses. Just because a business looks busy doesn't mean that they're profiting. Like, it doesn't mean that the economic model of the business makes sense. There are businesses and business owners that I've talked to where I'm like, "You look slam." They're like, "Yeah, but I'm not making any money." I'm like, "What do you mean you're not making any money?" "Well, because my costs are this and my costs are this, or my rent's too high." So what you need to do, again, comes back to proven process. You need to use a proven process, and you need to talk to at least 5 to 10 franchisees before buying. At least 5 to 10. We have people that they'll come in and they're like, "Yeah, I know a franchise I want to buy." I'm like, "Oh, cool. Awesome. So, did you get the FDD yet?" Like, "What did the FDD say?" Like, "Oh, I don't have the FDD yet." Like, hold on, but how do you know you want to buy the franchise if, like, the document that you're supposed to do your due diligence with, you haven't even got it? But okay, all right. Besides that, so how many franchisees did you talk to? I've talked to one, and the the franchisor is the one that introduced me to them. I'm like, oh wow, you're in for some trouble. So you want to talk to at least 5 to 10 franchisees so you can confirm what's going on. You can talk to them and find out what's happening. All right. Hey, so if you want to figure out if you should buy a franchise and learn the fastest and easiest way to figuring out the best franchise to buy and everything you need to know about the process, then you'll want to go get access to our Franchise Buyers Academy. In our Franchise Buyers Academy, you'll get a behind the scenes look into specific franchises and exactly how much money they are making. You'll get simple formulas for finding money-making franchises and a blueprint on how to scale them into a franchise empire that can be sold for a lot of money later on. You'll be able to finally answer the question on, should I buy a franchise? Now you can get access at franchiseempire.com/FBA. Now let's get back to the episode. Let's keep rocking and rolling. Are you guys getting value out of this, by the way? Is this helpful? If so, let me know in the chat or the comments below if you find this helpful at all. My intention in coming on and doing this is to help you avoid making a bad decision, to help reduce your risk, and just put you in the best opportunity to succeed. That's my intention. I know that a large percentage of you will never communicate with us or a brand or our team, and that's perfectly cool. Like, I just want to help educate, help put the information out there, and some of you will take it and use it, and hopefully you, like, when you do, you'll send me an email or leave us a comment and go, "Tarek, I followed your advice. I bought a franchise. Life is good. Everything's going great." That would be awesome. And for those of you who want access to, like, more of our condensed information and process, again, I think the best place to start is the Franchise Buyers Academy, because it gives you the best, highest level, in sequence information that you need to figure out how to own a money making franchise, kind of what criteria that you need to put together, the numbers that you need to look for. We dive into specific franchise options and we pull up the numbers, we go over the profit margins, we go up how to scale them, how to hire. It gives you like the whole shebang. And it's only $27. So I think it's like the best place to start. Easy to consume too. It's in this format. Again, this is one module from the Franchise Buyers Academy, right? So if you think this is helpful, and that link's there, franchiseempire.com/FBA. All right. So the next problem is overestimating how much you think you can make and not understanding the difference between gross sales and EBITDA, which is earnings before interest, taxes, and depreciation and amortization. That's a mouthful. So what happens is individuals don't know the specific criteria and boxes to check on doing due diligence. And so they just kind of wing the due diligence process, or they see in the FDD that, hey, the business is making X number of dollars on average, but there's a lot of asterisks and it's actually not really representative. They're leaving a bunch of franchisees out and they're just figuring out a way to report the best ones. Or it'll show that, hey, like the gross profit margin, and that's what I meant to put, not gross sales. I meant to put gross profit margin. So gross profit is just the number after your cost of labor and your cost of goods. There's still all of your other operating expenses out there. So people will see that there's a 60% gross profit margin, 50% gross profit margin, have no idea what that means. And part of why I can say this is because literally 10 years ago, before we bought our franchise, we signed a franchise agreement in 2015. 10 years ago in 2014, I was scouring the internet, trying to look for franchises, doing it the wrong way, seeing these gross profit margins like $400,000. You're making the gross profit margin. That's crazy. People are really making that much money. I had no idea. I didn't know. I didn't know what that term meant. I didn't know how it works. Now, some of you may think, Tarek, you're stupid. That's silly. Of course, we know what gross profit margin means. You'd be surprised. A lot of people don't. And if you already do, you're that much further ahead in your ability to then do due diligence, right? So you got to know the difference between some of these terms. That's one of the things we cover in the Franchise Buyers Academy too. I walk you through all of the terms that you need to know so you can be educated. Here's my theory, and here's the reason why I post some of our best content for free online, like this stuff, is because my belief is that to lead with education. The more education you have, the more knowledge that you have about how to go through the process, the do's and don'ts, the pros and cons, the formulas, the ratios, seeing behind the scenes how much money some of these franchises are making. I believe with that information, you become more confident and competent in the process. And through that confidence and competence, you're able to make a better informed decision, thereby reducing your risk and increasing your likelihood that you make the right decision and pull the trigger on something that will help align with your goals. That's my theory overall. And unfortunately, there's there's a lot of there's a lot of stuff in the franchise sales industry of just trying to get people to the finish line as quickly as possible without doing all of the homework and due diligence. And I just personally, I don't believe in that. So I guess whatever. And I plan on being more outspoken about this. Like, I plan on being more outspoken about what my beliefs are and protecting franchise buyers, because I'm tired of getting emails from franchisees that, we've never worked with, are like, hey, I'm struggling, or, I bought this franchise and it's not performing well. And there's some people where, as an example, I was in Boca, South Florida, this past weekend. I met a guy, super talented guy, had a great corporate background, and he bought a food franchise. And he's there working behind the counter in the food franchise. And he let us know that confidentially, my wife and I, we got talking to him that he was going to be selling the franchise, and I would imagine I understand why, knowing the food business, the lower profit margins, and that it was him and his wife working in the business. And as he's telling me about his background, I'm thinking, oh my goodness, it broke my heart that that was his experience with franchising, as a first business, because there were so many other businesses where he could have totally crushed it, that were in different industries, that were service-based businesses that probably would have cost less to open, had probably showed higher average sales, had a better track record, and it just would have been more aligned to his skill sets. Every day he would wake up knowing he's doing work that's in align with his purpose, or just work that he's good at and that he's excited to do, as opposed to being behind the counter of a food franchise taking orders, right? So the way to solve that problem and mistake that we were talking about, by the way, is to just do a pro forma. A pro forma is a spreadsheet of financial projections. There are ones that are super complicated and complex. You don't have to do it. You could do a back of the napkin pro forma, right? Where you're estimating, you're just projecting out numbers. What do I think my sales would be? What do I think my expenses would be? In order to get that sales projection, what's my average ticket, meaning average amount that my customer pays me? How many of those do I need in order to do that? How much do I need to spend on marketing? You just basically estimate and project all of the numbers. Guess what, ladies and gentlemen? I didn't do this before buying our franchise. We signed our franchise. So this is where I say that I'm not the guy that did everything right. I'm the guy that made mistakes. And I'm like, hey, learn from my mistakes. because we signed our franchise agreement, and then the franchisor gave us a pro forma, and they're like, "Fill this out." I'm like, "What is this?" And it, it looked very complicated. I had no idea what it was, how to fill it out, how it all worked. And after I actually did it and looked at it, I was like, "Oh wow, I wish this would have been helpful to see and go through before deciding on buying the franchise." And so now, as a part of our process, and we work with clients, my advice is that you must do a pro forma before you decide on a franchise. You must do it. It is a requirement. Whether you actually do it or not is on you. You now have the information. You now know that that is one of my due diligence requirements is you must do a pro forma. And so if you don't do it and you buy a franchise and it turns out it doesn't, you know, meet your needs or it wasn't what you thought it was, well, that's on you. You now have the information, right? We have a few more, and then we'll dive into the rest of the questions. This is going a little bit longer than I thought, so thanks for hanging around. We still have a good amount of people hanging around live. So number one is not not number one. So the next mistake is not having clarity on how much money you can actually profit and how your ownership style and funding method impacts your profitability. This would be a pretty in-depth one to unpack. Since we're running out of time, I won't go too deep on this. But if you run the business as an owner operator where you are the manager of that business, you're going to show a totally different profit margin than if you run the business semi absentee, meaning you're not the one working in the day to day of the business or managing it, and you hire a manager. So if I hire, a manager to run my store for 40 grand a year because I'm still working my job or doing something different, well, I'm obviously going to profit less in that business because I'm paying that manager. And then it really depends on you can manipulate. Here's the thing that you guys need to know. Profit really doesn't matter. Uh it doesn't matter because you can manipulate profit and how profit shows in a profit and loss statement. To trendy for threads points, it's all about total owner benefit, right? So someone could show, as an example, you could look at a profit and loss statement for any business, right? And see that at the bottom it says net income, AKA another term for profit, is 30 grand. And you look at that profit and loss statement, and you go, oh man, that person's only making 30 grand a year in their business. But it turns out they're actually on salary too. So their W-2 wage that they pay themselves is, let's call it, maybe that's 80 grand. So the total owner benefit there is already 110 grand, but the profit and loss statement shows they're only making 30 grand in profit. So it's not a true representation of what the owner is actually making. Then when you actually start looking into it, you look at the profit and loss statement more. Again, this is just a hypothetical example of a random business, right? You look at the profit and loss statement more, and then it turns out that this business owner pays for their health insurance out of their business, which is $1,000 a month. That's another 12 grand a year. That's another 12 grand you add as an owner's benefit. It also turns out that they took a vacation that they combined with a work trip and they were able to write off, and that cost 10 grand. And that's on the profit and loss statement. So you start adding all those things up, and that's what the total owner's benefit is. So this is where the devil's in the details, really, in a lot of these things. So you have to understand that stuff. And so, when looking at franchises, the way you do that is number one, by a pro forma. We talked about what a pro forma is, right? And by talking to franchisees. Because a pro forma alone, you're guessing, you're making guesstimates. You got to talk to franchisees, have conversations with them, right? Hey, what does a good profit margin look like? What's a bad profit margin? What are your COGS? I just talked to a franchisee the other day and said their cost of goods were 30%. Why is yours 40%? Well, because I'm actually in a different market and it's more expensive here because of the shipping or whatever it is. Like, this is how you find out. And so that's a taste of, as an example, in our zero to profitable franchise system where we go deep into due diligence when after, folks find and are talking to a few franchises. These are the type of things we walk you through and handhold you through so you do the right due diligence. because it's importante. All right. It's important. All right. So next one is getting so excited about a franchise after one phone call that you are already sold and have confirmation bias throughout the rest of the process. I unfortunately see this often. It drives me crazy, and yeah, I struggled to maintain my professionalism in that moment because it's like that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Like I've literally had people that have had one or two meetings with the franchisor. Again, haven't got the FDD, haven't talked to franchisees, and they're like, "Yeah, that's the franchise I'm going to buy." And I'm like, "What do you mean? You haven't checked any of the due diligence boxes." And part of it is just that people are uneducated, right? They just don't know. They don't know the process, and that's why I put content out like this so that you can be educated. So you got to do your proper due diligence, check all the boxes. Again, we have a whole due diligence system. It's phase 2 in our zero to profitable franchise system. It's the meatiest part of that program is due diligence. So there's a whole bunch of components out of there on doing that in terms of reviewing the FDD, talking to franchisees, how to navigate that whole process, putting together the pro forma, a lot of specifics and nuances that it just would be impossible to go through here. And literally it's hours of content that I've made walking our clients through it. All right, next question. Next mistake is not understanding the step-by-step on how to analyze a franchise with the profitable franchise formula and never feeling confident about making a decision. Some of this, like they're overlapping, right? They're overlapping mistakes a bit, but at the end of the day, like you have to use a proven due diligence process. The main 4 tenets of that process is the profitable franchise formula, which we talked about earlier here in this live, right? Which is belief in the business. It has to align with your skill sets. You have to verify the market demand, right? In your specific market. And then the profit potential. You have to verify the profit potential of the business. I think I talk about this more in just a second. Another mistake people make is hearing that a franchise is making a lot of money, but having no data to back it up. I mean, what more do I need to say about this? Data, data, data. Franchises have something called the item 19 in the FDD for a reason. And so if a franchise does not show how much money you can make in the item 19, to me, that is a red flag. That is the opportunity for them to brag about the track record of their franchise and what it produces. So if there's no item 19, that would concern me. Right. And so item 19 and then franchisee validation, right? So talking to existing franchisees, and sometimes you got to dig deep because people are embarrassed and they don't want to tell you that they're struggling. So they may, in franchisee validation, they may be like, oh, yeah, it's cool, da da da. But it turns out they're actually not making money. So you got to be able to read between the lines there. Next mistake is not understanding profit and loss statements or how to analyze a business. So you just go with your gut on every decision. What more do I need to say about this? Look, gut instincts are good to a point. As an example, when we bought our franchise, my gut had told me that a certain location was going to be good, but then I backed it up with logic. I researched all of the development in the area, I researched the statistics, the metrics, and then was able to like justify my gut feeling with logic. And again, what helps with that is the pro forma. We talked about that. So, what's next? Again, our Franchise Buyers Academy. For those of you who like, you still you want more meat and potatoes of like, how do I really go out there and understand what are the franchises that are making money? How do I really know what are the ones that are right for me? Like, I want an actual like system and process to go through. Our Franchise Buyers Academy covers that. You can go to like, if you enjoyed this, by the way, if you enjoyed this the whole thing, this is literally not like 5% of the content that's in the Franchise Buyers Academy, except it's me recording it, going through it. And I do that on all sorts of topics like sales to investment ratio, how to scale, hiring, reviewing numbers and profit in certain franchises, like breaking it all down for you. So you go to franchiseempire.com/FBA. And so basically, you know, what it'll help you do is no more wasting time searching the internet for the best franchises or struggling to figure out if you should buy a franchise and which one. We have a lot of people that go through the Franchise Buyers Academy and go, have a totally clear idea now on like, yes, I do want to pursue franchising because now I have a clear reality of what the numbers look like um, et cetera. And no more pushy franchise salespeople, right? Like you're just, yeah, that's not cool. Trendy for Threads question: does the academy complement working with a seasoned consultant? Yeah, 100%. Yeah, 100%. Because it's just impossible for someone to cover the level of detail and nuance that's covered. I mean, it took me months to put the Franchise Buyers Academy together. We tested it. We ran it as a beta first. We got feedback, then made changes. So I think there's about 4 to 5 hours of detailed content that's literally broken down in like PowerPoint format. So yeah, it's impossible. This is part of why we use these education platforms and courses and videos for our clients as the foundation, because it's like, okay, we might have a 1 hour Zoom meeting. It's impossible to cover all of the nuances and details in that meeting. And then I'd be repeating myself every single day, day in, day out, day in, day out. So yes, it does complement. And so after the Franchise Buyers Academy, the result that you'll experience is, one, you'll get a behind the scenes look into specific franchises and exactly how much money they're making. So we pull them up, break down the sales. For some of them, we break down the profit percentages if they're disclosed. And then I talk you through all that and how it relates to how you need to go about the process. You'll walk away for sure with a clear answer once and for all on, should I buy a franchise? It'll provide you that clarity. Um, and then you'll also have proven frameworks for finding money making franchises. And we go over in there how you scale them into multiple units that can then be sold for a lot of money. So I literally break it down and show you how do you go from owning one unit to then owning multiple units. I break it down with service models and retail models. I explain how that funding process works, how it has to be staggered out. It's like, I think it's actually pretty cool. I nerd out on this stuff, by the way. This was Rodney. He had posted in a Facebook group that we have for some folks that he said the Franchise Buyers Academy was one of the best courses I've taken since researching how to start a franchise. As a matter of fact, it's one of the only courses that takes a deep dive into how owning a franchise can either benefit you or not be a good fit. Yeah, actually that's a good point. It's not a fluff course. Like I lay out the pros and cons very clearly. So it's not the whole time being like, hey, franchising is the best thing since sliced bread. On the contrary, I wanted to lay out something so that people could save the time and not have to waste the time of doing a bunch of due diligence on franchises. What's the average time to complete the academy? I think there's a total of about around 4 hours worth of modules. They're broken down into maybe like 15-minute chunks at a time, 15, 20-minute chunks. So we've had people that literally enrolled and finished watching it for the end of the day. It's all really just dependent upon you and how you want to consume it. You get lifetime access to it, so you can go through it, watch it as many times as you want. You can speed it up. So when I consume a lot of content or watch things, especially educational things, I'll put it on 1.5x speed or 1.25x speed. Just because sometimes like I tend to talk slow. And some people do. So it's like I just want it at a quicker pace. And then this was Mark. Actually, Mark went through the Franchise Buyers Academy, got so much. Mark was trying to figure out, did he get laid off? I can't remember if he had gotten laid off, but I know he was in between jobs. And he was trying to figure out, he's like, I got 10 more years left in my career. I'm trying to figure out, do I want to go the franchise route? He's very analytical, right? So he's an engineer. So he wasn't going to go start a business from scratch. He didn't want to go do that, try to figure all that stuff out on his own. He didn't have any business experience too, right? Been an engineer all his life. So he decided that he was trying to figure out that, or should he go get another job and spend the last 10 years in a job to then retire and finish his career? So I was like, I mean, that's a good question, man. Like the only way to like really figure that out is to dive deep and like get some more education. Like in a quick conversation, I can't give you the answer to that. Only you can make that decision. So he went through the Franchise Buyers Academy, got so much value out of it, wind up deciding to work in our more robust zero to profitable franchise program. And that has a money back guarantee. So there was basically like no risk for him for that because it was like, hey, if you wind up deciding franchising is not, not right for you, you can get your money back. So, but he went up working with our team and within, what was it like 2 months, 3 months, he wound up buying a franchise. We were all shocked because he just was so decisive. And I think part of that was because of the process and all the education he got. But, he said that he would recommend it for anyone interested and looking to get a solid foundation on what's involved. And he said, I had an interest in franchising before the course, but felt pretty unsure about it. And like, how does one make sure that they're not making a mistake when buying a franchise? And what do I not know that I should know? And he said, after the course, I can see that one can actually chart a clear course towards deciding if franchising is right for them, how to maximize potential for success, and what the next steps might be. He posted that in the Facebook group, uh, like before he even started working with us as a client. So this, like he posted this before he started working with us as a client. So way before he actually wind up buying a franchise, which I thought was pretty cool. So, cool. Trending for Threads said, great. I'll be purchasing the Academy. Awesome. Excited that you're going to do that. I hope you'll get a lot of value out of it. All right, let me hit these last questions real quick, which was, how do I feel about UPS and FedEx? I don't believe FedEx franchises. I think they're all corporate. I know UPS franchises. Um, I mean, the real money in UPS is working with business owners. And small business owners and like printing materials for them, banners, there's not much margin in the drop off business. They're drop off sites for Amazon. So I know they have a lot of red tape. They're very strict. So there's some franchises that have more of a corporate environment feel than others. So like UPS would be one of those ones where it's like, you don't really get to decide on anything. Like you're going to do it this way and that's the way you're going to do it. Some people are cool with that and like that style. So that's just like my overall broad opinion on it overall. Do you think home services franchises like cleaning and junk removal will get saturated? Yeah, I think a lot of businesses will get saturated. I think it just depends on the specific market. So this is where the advice that we give our clients and the tools that we give them access to are we give them specific advice and guidance on how to assess the market demand in their area, and how to go through that process so that they can validate if the proper market demand's there. Because guys, look, the reality is there are just franchises that perform worse in other markets or areas or cities because there's just too many competitors. There's more supply than demand. It's like a basic economic principle. Franchisors will lead you to believe that, hey, every market has the opportunity to be successful. And I mean that's somewhat true, but you still have to do your due diligence. And again, I learned this firsthand with our second location that had 4 competitors within like a 1.5, 2-mile radius, and we struggled there, and I had to bust my tail after buying that as a resale to increase sales 35%. Whereas our store in California, there was no competitors within a 5-mile radius, and we were busy from, like, day 1. Um, that contributed to it. People were driving from an exit or 2 away to come see us. Eventually, a competitor did open up across the street from us, but they only did acai bowls. So because we were so robust in doing juice and smoothies too, and we had been there first, it helped. What's your opinion of Neighborly franchises, Ahmad? Well, Neighborly is the 800-pound gorilla in the home services space. They're the largest home services franchisor. I think they have like 20 something franchise brands. within that franchise system. I would say it's certainly one where like they're going to have the model spelled out with their franchise brands. Yeah, like you're going to know if it's proven or not. Just talk to a bunch of franchisees. They're going to be probably one of the more structured and strict franchisors because of how large they are and how many franchisees they have. So, if you want a little bit more of a corporate replica environment, meaning just like, hey, things are kind of spelled out for you, then yeah, Neighborly, yeah, could be a good fit. They're definitely well respected, but you still have to do your due diligence. Again, like no matter the franchise, even if it's one like we do a weekly newsletter where we break down different franchises and we go over like how much money we pull up the FDD and like how much money they're making and stuff like that. And some of you probably have seen that. Even anything that we cover, like you still got to do your own independent due diligence and you still have to validate that it matches the profitable franchise formula. So that you believe in the business, that it aligns with your skill sets, that the profit potential is there, and that the demand is there. So, yeah. Oh, wow. Lots of questions. Michelle, thank you. She said, I just got home. Best class this week. This was a good live. Awesome. I'm so glad. Yesterday I was like, oh crap, I don't have a scheduled live. I got to figure out what I'm going to do it on. And so I'm glad this was valuable. Where can I find the link to buy the course? It's scrolling at the bottom. That's franchiseempire.com/FBA, but I'll drop it here again as well. And that's the link. What do I think of Kitchen Tune-Up? Kitchen Tune-Up, I believe, is under the Home Franchise Concepts brand. So although I don't have a deep knowledge of Kitchen Tune-Up per se, I know that Home Franchise Concepts, which is the parent company of Budget Blinds, I know that they're well respected and that Budget Blinds has had a lot of very successful franchisees. So again, you still have to make sure it aligns with your skill sets. You still have to validate the profit potential. You still have to make sure the demand is there. And that you believe in the business overall. Do I see Pool Care, Pinch a Penny as recession resistant? That is a very interesting question. I would say sort of, because the base model of Pinch a Penny is the recurring income from service clients, right? So you have a certain amount of clients that you um, that you clean pools for, like monthly or weekly, and it's a recurring revenue. So I don't think, generally speaking, no matter what's going on in the economy, I think people are going to want their pools clean. They're probably not going to change that. But I think a lot of pinch a penny as well is maintenance, or the service calls. So when things break, so pool pump's not working, heat pump's not working, those sort of things. And there could be some of those elements where people choose not to get something replaced if it's more optional, because of money. So yeah, we actually have a client that we're coaching as we recently rolled out. We're only working with just a handful at the moment, but we have some current and past multi-unit franchisees on our team at Franchise Empire. And we've actually started coaching franchisees now. So we have franchisees that come to us so that we had a gentleman that bought a pool franchise business that was doing a pretty significant amount of sales, but it was a turnaround opportunity. It was actually owned corporately by the franchisor, and it wasn't doing well. It was being run improperly, and so he bought it. And so our team's actually been coaching him. He went from, he had a pretty cool actually feedback and testimonial about how he went from losing, like the business showed $100,000 loss in Q1, and they're trending break even now after after some of the work he's done, which I thought was pretty cool. But there is I don't want to say there's some money in the business. You obviously have to look at the FDDs for franchises to validate how much money there is. But yeah, I've been impressed at some of those pool franchise businesses in terms of like what they've sold for. I actually saw a Pinch a Penny that was selling for a good bit of money. Um, yeah. Anyways, you know what's weird though about Pinch a Penny? Actually, what I learned, this is where there's just nuance to everything, right? So I looked into a Pinch a Penny resale at one point, but what happens is you can't finance them with SBA because the franchisor takes a first lien position. And in order to get an SBA loan, SBA has to take the first, or the lender has to take the first lien position on the loan. I was like, whoa, that was interesting. And this one was selling for like over $1 million. It was selling for like 1.2. I was like, interesting. I don't know how that, I mean, I know how someone would finance it, but it's like SBA tends to be the main way. Let's see, we're becoming part of an emerging brand and tree service. What's your take on that? Also in roofing. Oh, that's a little bit too broad of you do your homework. My thing would be do your homework and due diligence against something that's not emerging. Why choose emerging over something that's more proven and that has a longer track record? Like there has to be a very, very distinct reason why you'd be choosing an emerging brand. So that was this question here, just so you guys have a visual. Trendy said, I just got a notification that Crumble is going to smaller cookies to try to boost sales. Yeah, and they just did a whole rebrand too. I think they just rebranded to Crumble. So they're not limited to cookies because I think they're going to do other like desserts now. Which I mean, good for them. They're adapting, and that probably has to do with the stories about sales dropping. Again, I don't know. I'm now gonna verify that. Maybe I'll do a whole video on that of me breaking it down and looking at the numbers and stuff. I'm curious. Do you think pickleball franchise and industry is a trend and is not pride for long-term outlook? I have no idea. I was thinking about that in the car the other day, actually, because someone on our team loves pickleball. I don't know. Yeah, I just don't know. It's like, some of being an entrepreneur is rolling the dice a bit, even with franchising, like especially if there's an emerging concept, like, people that bought into Orange Theory, a lot of those franchisees did really, really well. And so it was like, will it be a fad? Will it stand the test of time? Orange Theory has shown to have a cult-like following, and it has stood the test of time so far. But most fitness franchises like that don't. A lot of them have a life cycle. So I don't know. You're one of the few channels I watch trust starting to see franchise gurus pop up, which is concerning. Always enjoy the content. Awesome. Thank you. Appreciate it. Always just try to just provide helpful stuff. They already have five franchisees is not proven. Michelle, as a part of due diligence, you need to talk to 5 to 10 franchisees. So I mean, it's definitely emerging. 5 franchisees is cool, good for them. But again, what's the benefit of going with a franchise brand that has 5 franchisees as opposed to one that has more of a track record and has 25 or 50 or 75? Or that's one of the mistakes people make. So I would just be cautious there. And when you wind up liking a specific category, my advice is to do due diligence on franchises that compare. That would be my answer. How many franchises do I currently own? None at the moment, in between opportunities. Yeah. So I'm always on the lookout, but my current business keeps me very busy and happy. And, I think that's something that, it's a question that some people franchising is not the right fit for. Like sometimes we have people that reach out and they're like, hey, I have this business and I want to buy a franchise. And it's like, well, why don't you just grow your current business? Like, and they think that buying a franchise is going to solve their problem. Right. And so like we'll actually talk people out of buying a franchise when we think it doesn't make sense. Like, okay, you're busy, you're overwhelmed, you have a lot of work, but with your business, but you want to buy a franchise because you don't like your business anymore. Like, I think that's a recipe for disaster personally. So All right, ladies and gentlemen, that's it. I did not intend to go an hour and 25 minutes. It's 6:27 Easter time. I am pretty sure I'm late for dinner. So if you got value, thank you, thank you. If you're watching on YouTube, by the way, thumbs up the video. That would be very helpful. And every Thursday, my intention is every Thursday to do this at 5 p.m. Eastern time. And yeah, I look forward to seeing you guys on the next one. Thanks for showing up and staying on. Hey, before we go, thank you so much for listening to this episode. Please subscribe here on YouTube if you haven't already. And the biggest thank you that you could ever give me is to share this episode with someone who you think will benefit. That means that we can share this message with more people and hopefully positively inspire them like we have you. So thank you. And until next time, go build your empire.